For 15 long years, the sprawling Montana ranch had been nothing but silence, broken only by the whistle of the wind across the valley and the low bellow of cattle moving along the fences. Daniel Hayes, the rancher who worked the land with his calloused hands, had grown used to the quiet. He had not always been alone. Years ago, he had loved a woman with all his heart, a woman he had once planned a future with. But when she had left him for the comforts of city life, Daniel had sealed his heart behind a wall as strong as the fences he built. Every sunrise became another day of toil, every sunset another night of solitude. His hands grew rough, his beard thick, his muscles strong from work, but his heart ached in silence, untouched and unshared. The townsfolk knew him as the lonely rancher, a man who kept to himself, who nodded politely but never lingered. Women would smile at him when he rode into town for supplies, but he never returned the gesture for long. What was the point? Love had burned him once, and he swore never to touch the flame again. One chilly spring morning, as storm clouds gathered above the snow-capped mountains, Daniel rode home along the muddy trail after mending a broken fence. As he approached the main gate of his ranch, he stopped short. A wagon stood there, its wheels splattered with mud, horses snorting as they rested. And stepping down from the wagon was a woman unlike any he had ever seen. She wore a cream-colored prairie dress that swayed in the wind, a small veil pinned to her chestnut hair, and in her hand she clutched a worn suitcase. Her eyes searched the ranch as if she belonged there. Daniel, stunned, dismounted his horse, his boots sinking into the mud. "Ma'am," he said gruffly, his voice rough from years of disuse, "you must be lost." But the woman only smiled nervously. "Are you Mr. Daniel Hayes?" she asked. He frowned. "I am." She lifted her chin and answered, "Then I believe I'm your bride." Daniel felt as though lightning had struck. Bride? He hadn't sent for any woman. He hadn't written a letter in years, let alone to some mail-order service. He thought it must be a cruel joke played by the townfolk or a tragic mistake of paperwork. But the woman's eyes, filled with hope and uncertainty, told another story. She was genuine. She believed she had come here to start a new life with him. "I think there's been some mistake," Daniel said slowly, trying to find the right words. But as the rain began to drizzle, and she stood there trembling, suitcase in hand, he realized something. Mistake or not, this woman had nowhere else to go tonight. And no matter how hardened he had become, Daniel Hayes was not a man who could send someone into the storm. So he offered her shelter. Her name was Clara. She was from the East, a woman who had answered an ad for a mail-order bride, desperate to escape a life of servitude and poverty. She told him the agency must have confused addresses, for she carried letters addressed to Mr. Hayes, Montana Territory. She had traveled for weeks, believing she would meet her future husband at the end of her journey. Daniel listened, conflicted. He wanted to tell her to leave in the morning, that he wasn't the man she thought he was. But as the firelight flickered across her weary face, something stirred in him. It had been 15 long years since he had let himself feel anything for a woman. And now, by sheer twist of fate, one had arrived at his doorstep. That night, Daniel lay awake staring at the ceiling, wrestling with thoughts he hadn't allowed himself in over a decade. Could this woman, this mistake, be the answer to the loneliness that haunted him? Or was letting her stay a dangerous risk, one that could shatter him all over again? Outside, the rain poured, but inside, the storm brewing in his heart was far more powerful. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the ranch washed clean under a crisp blue sky. Clara awoke early, already bustling in the small kitchen, preparing breakfast with what little she found in the pantry. Daniel stepped in, surprised at the smell of biscuits and fresh coffee. He had forgotten what it was like to share a meal with someone, to hear the clatter of dishes and the sound of laughter at his table. Clara smiled nervously as she set down a plate. "I figured the least I could do is help," she said. For a moment, Daniel almost smiled, but he caught himself. He could not let this mistake settle into his life too deeply. He was not a man who believed in fate, or at least he thought he wasn't. As the days turned into weeks, Clara remained. She helped with chores, stitched torn shirts, fed the chickens, and brought warmth back into the cold ranch house. Slowly, Daniel found himself drawn to her. Not just because of her beauty, but because of her strength. She wasn't fragile like he had assumed. Clara had endured hardship in the East, And though she was gentle, she was also resilient. They began to talk more, at the dinner table, by the fire, out in the fields. She asked about his past, and though it pained him, he told her about the woman who had left him, about why he had shut himself away. Clara listened without judgment, her hand resting gently on his. It was the first time in 15 years that Daniel felt the comfort of another's touch, and it broke through his walls like sunlight through storm clouds. But the shadow of truth still loomed. Clara believed she was meant to marry him, that she had been sent here for a reason. And Daniel knew he had to tell her the truth, that he had never sent for her, never placed an ad, never intended for her to come. Yet every time he tried, the words stuck in his throat. He feared that if she learned the truth, she would leave, and with her would go the warmth, the laughter, the second chance at life he hadn't dared to hope for. The turning point came one evening when Clara stood on the porch, gazing at the mountains. "Daniel," she whispered, "I've never felt at home anywhere in my life. But here, with you, it feels different. I know it may sound foolish, but maybe this wasn't a mistake at all. Maybe it was meant to be." Her words struck him like a hammer. For years he had cursed fate, cursed love, cursed the life that had left him alone. But now, standing beside Clara under the painted Montana sky, he realized fate had not abandoned him, it had simply taken its time. He finally told her the truth, that he had never written for a bride. Clara went quiet, tears shimmering in her eyes. For a terrifying moment, Daniel thought she would pack her suitcase and leave. But instead she smiled softly. "Maybe you didn't send for me," she said, "but I came here anyway, and I don't want to go back." Daniel took her hand, his rough fingers trembling. After 15 years of silence, he let himself speak the words he had long buried. "Then stay, not as a mistake, not as a bride from some agency, but as the woman I choose." And when she leaned into him, their lips meeting under the vast Montana sky, Daniel Hayes knew his years of loneliness had finally ended.